So if you log into Wi-Fi and go to that.
Thanks so much, Dr. Wolfman, for the opportunity to speak here. I was taking notes down as Dr. Paulson, Dr. Norbosch, and Dr. Wolfman were talking, and the 3 points that I got was, it's not about you, it's about everyone else, the team, department, and how we have to really deliver value to those around us. From Dr. Paulson's lecture. And then Dr. Norbosch is just being mindful and being aware and having some EQ to assess the events, if you're in a charged or emotional, sort of involved situation, having the mindfulness to sort of handle those stressful situations. And then Dr. Wolfman, knowing what is important to you and how to put that into work in an active way in your life. I think I'm going to resound in my talk. So I would like, if you would like to participate, please go to polleverywhere.com, Nellie, and you can participate. We're experimenting because we don't usually use Wi-Fi. We don't have Wi-Fi, but Matt back there has been kind enough to hook my computer up. So Matt, I can't control here, so can you just advance for me? Okay, so I have no disclosures, and these are the things that I'm going to go over. In like 3 things are the, let's do that. Can you unplug and plug? Would that help? The mouse. I lost control of the mouse, yeah. That's okay. It's not so much the point, it's just advancing the slides. Oh, do you see one, Darcy? We do not have a clicker. That's okay, Matt's got it back. So we'll go ahead and advance. So those are the 4 items that I'm going to touch on that I think all the speakers really talked about. My emphasis maybe will be on mastery, but self-care, flexible values, and understanding what your values are. So if you don't mind going onto that website and just clicking on where you are in your life and career, so I get an understanding of the distribution, that'd be super fantastic. So most of us here are junior residents. Okay, great. Good. We can advance if you can. Good. And what do you think is the most important? What is the one word that you would use to describe your perspective on fellowship? Useful? Yeah, I hope so. Location, yeah, definitely. That is a priority for me. Expertise, yeah. Mastery, great. Intense, super intense. It's very super intense. We'll talk about that. It's necessary, yeah, in most cases. Can you go ahead and advance? Tough, yeah. And what are the most important traits in that you think it's important in job career satisfaction? I think most people, hit it on the head. Balance, colleagues, definitely compensation, money, definitely staff, colleagues, yeah, right, people around us, and just being like enjoying the experience and the process. Autonomy, great. So we'll go through this pretty quickly because I know we're short on time. Matt, just feel free to just go through the end of the slides because these have animations on it, and I don't want to keep people here. So I was a urology resident. I'm like, oh, I love urology, and I did 2 years. I'm like, this is not what I thought I wanted, and I changed and went into radiology, and then did fellowship. So it's the idea that So for me, fellowship was, this was my description of fellowship: growth, job search, stress, burnout, and mastery. But there's a light at this long tunnel. I mean, I'm 11 years out from med school, but that light is pretty intense, and you get there eventually. So here was my experience with fellowship application. I interviewed at 3 places, and in general, the faculty were superb. The spectrum of diseases and the volume. The main differences that I saw in the institutions were primarily location, flexibility. Some institutions were a lot more flexible with your schedule and gave you more elective time than others, and hours. There's different cultures. One of the some they ended at 5 and everyone was gone, and other cultures you were there until 7 or 8 p.m. And I think these are the 3 primary differences I think that really that I didn't really think very much about, but I wish I had known going into fellowship. And I'm a big person. I'm a huge tech person, and I really looked for institutions that had softwares that was going to enable me to do what I needed to do. So we've heard of this, right? Follow your passion. It's like there's a right job waiting for you. And then life happens, right? I mean, I went urology, radiology, it was a disaster. And now, it's great, but you don't know, and we don't know what we think we want. And it actually turns out there's a sort of a newer perspective on this, and it's the idea of craftsman mindset. It's the idea that you're so good you can't be ignored. Are you able to advance, Matt? Perfect. And it's the idea that you become like you gain mastery over your current position, and how that is going to be the foundation for your next step. So if you are not focusing on that now, then you're going to be left behind. So how do you do that? So there's 2 processes: knowledge and meta knowledge. Number 1 is career capital. You have to be really good, and I think this was the one thing that wasn't emphasized. Is just how, we just assume that you're good, but are you really good? Are you as good as you can be? And it's because people think in residency you're growing for sure, but then as you go into your early career, people plateau and often assume, like, as I read more, I'll have more expertise, and that's not true. People plateau. Dr. Larry Bassett, who was a breast imaging luminary, my former attending before he retired, he gave a conference and he said the most important predictor for breast radiologists and outstanding, excellent breast radiologists wasn't volume. Do you know what it was? Or any guesses? What predicted an outstanding, excellent breast radiologist, or any radiologist for that matter, actually? How many questions they ask? It was the feedback they got from pathology. So what you called, was it right or wrong? And the quicker they got, the better they became. So so that was really important. It was getting feedback. And this is the idea of you're breaking out of the average via deliberate practice. Deliberate practice. What is that? It's focusing on your weaknesses. So for us, it's being, more concise, being more accurate, reading faster. Those are really important things, and you have to really focus on trying to do that. The second part is meta knowledge. Do you know what the stepping stones are to get to where you need to be? Matt, are you able to advance? And all of this is founded on your values, right? Things that are important to you, like Dr. Wolfman said. You have to know those. So knowledge, this is what I did, and this is I studied every morning before work for 30 minutes. I woke up 6 o'clock and just started doing flashcards. And then when I was a 4th year resident, this really happened when I was studying for my boards. I was totally stressed out my 3rd year, going crazy. And so I came across this book, Make It Stick, and the Art of Learning, and learned how to study. So we got montage my 4th year, and I wanted to know where I was. When you're a resident, you know who the strong residents are and who the average residents are. So then what I did was I systematically went through and figured out what are the things that differentiated these 2 groups. And then I found out, I realized these strong residents read about 1.5 times more than the average residents. And so then I'm like, okay, this is what I have to do. So I started reading a lot. and as a resident, I became one of the top readers. And then when I was a fourth year, I was like, what the fellows? How fast are they reading? And I figured it out. And so I'm like, and so when I was on rotation, I would read as much as my fellows, because this is the next step, right? That's the next step that you need to master, is the immediate, forward, like, sort of step you have to take. And then when I was a fellow, I'm like, how much are my attendees reading? And so then I would read at the pace that I needed to be to get to where my attendings were. And during this time, I would do the flashcards. I would do, every day. The other thing I would do is train your eyes, right? Because in radiologists love pattern recognition. Reading a book doesn't work as well. And so what I learned is, if I had a hard time like differentiating cholangiocarcinoma from infiltrative HCC, or like recognizing appendicitis on MR, or or sort of very uncommon things, right? Like you have congenital diaphragmatic hernia, congenital heart defect, things that you just are probably not going to see. So I went through montage, and like as I went through the clinical day and came across diseases that I didn't understand, I would look up like 10 different cases that was there, and so that I would train my eyes, learn the pattern, read a radiographics paper, and then convert it to flashcards, so that next time when I read, I'll come across these and remind and retrieve and recall. So moving on, so mastery is really important, and I shared with you my approach. It's not really my approach; it was the approach that that are driven by science and really data. And you can read the book. I highly recommend it. If I think most of you are junior residents, so it might be relevant for you. Make It Stick, outstanding book. Managing stress. So this is going to happen, right? I mean, you're going to have, some people will have children. You'll have loss in your life. You'll get married. You'll get divorced. Some things happen, and so there's a lot of stress that happens throughout residency, fellowship, early career, and beyond. And when we're happy and calm, things are great. Our judgment, our accuracy increases, but the reverse is true. If you're stressed out and you are charged emotionally, you're not going to have the same level of accuracy. And so, be mindful of that, and sort of what Dr. Norbosch, be measured and intentional. Be measured and intentional. And so I came across meditation when I was a third year. I told you I was going, like, stress was like 11 out of 10 studying for the boards. And so came across the book, The Art of Learning, and Josh Waiskin's masters both chest and push hands, which is type of it's Taekwondo, and he becomes the world champion in both fields, and he talks about what it takes to learn, right? And when whatever expertise you choose. And one of the things he says is he meditates an hour every day. I'm like, okay, if he does that, I'm going to do it. And so I started meditating 1 minute, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, and longer if I can. And this is something that I want to share with you, because what meditation does is it helps you respond and not react, right? Dr. Norbosch was saying you have to be measured and intentional. And this is how you do it. You do it through meditation, mindful awareness. And so that you're able to maintain your cognitive function and your judgment skills when it's stressed, right? Because most of us lose it. And in addition, a lot of performance research have shown that it improves performance. It improves, like Navy SEALs, their performance. It improves people who are already high-end, and like brings up to the next level. And so that mindfulness is really important. So, we know that judgment, there's two types of judgment. One is fast thinking, the other one is slow thinking. Fast, it's our gut, right? It's like our gut reaction that we get. And, it's intuitive, but the problem is we're not very vigilant. It's not very detail oriented, and you come to that decision really quickly. The other one is slow thinking. It's like you're very vigilant. This usually happens in very pessimistic people, cynical. You're like, oh, what do they want? And you're just very, very detail oriented and very vigilant. And that takes more time. But for us, it's important because you have to recognize that both processes are going on at the same time, all the time. And so when we are working on a day-to-day, interacting with, people and dealing with conflicts, to sort of recognize that this is happening and just double check, right? And that is what you're thinking actually founded? Does it make sense? Does it do all the, things fall, or is there something funny? Is there something that doesn't make sense? But so for me, like one very simple example is when we do reports, right? It's so easy to double check your errors, typos, and most of us probably don't do it. I didn't do it consistently, right? It's like that extra effort, a minimal effort, but it can make a huge impact. And so I just want to emphasize, just being mindful that these are going on. And again, we have certain cognitive biases, and it's just to test and retest your beliefs to make sure that what you think is actually founded on reality, and that you're just not lost. And I say this because a couple of times I sort of went off and had this idea, but in reality it wasn't founded on reality, and so it can really impair your ability to make the best choices. This is kind of like a special topic for me, and maybe and I only recognize this in retrospect, but I think it's important for you to be mindful of this. This happened to me a couple times, and I guess I'll be a little vulnerable and say it happened to me during fellowship. It happened to me, when I was a surgical resident. This is what happens, like burnout, and 1 in 3 physicians. This happens to 1 in 3 physicians. So, 1/3 of you, 2/3 actually, two will be affected by this, if not affected. And it's when you lose enthusiasm in work. When your work no longer becomes meaningful, and then it starts to impact people around you, right? Because you're treating people as if they were objects. And the problem is when people suffer burnout, and it's a common problem in maybe not as well recognized in trainees, but it's becoming more recognized. Is you risk making errors. You lose becoming not compassionate or empathetic, and that's very problematic because what Dr. Norwash says, these things are really, really important, right? You have to have sort of a sense of peace and just being aware and being mindful to help with these things. So what contributes to burnout? Loss of time. This is like residency, right, and fellowship. Loss of autonomy. You lose control over the practice environment because you sort of have to do whatever and say yes to everything. And inefficient use of your time, right? You're there until 9 p.m. You're like, why am I here until 9 p.m.? I haven't been read out until 8 p.m. So these are the contributing factors. And so I bring it up not because I don't know how to fix it, but just to bring, I think if we become aware of it, then we can do something about it. Interventions, there's been big studies that have been done because this is impacting institutions, right? And going back to mindfulness and awareness, and they've shown that it has decreased burnout. It has improved people, wellness long term, and it's durable. And so, I encourage you to look into this mindfulness and awareness because it's going to help you not only in reducing stress, but also improving your performance and mastery. Errors and mistakes. Dr. Bassett, the breast radiologist, he has this great quote: "Seek excellence, not perfection." I remember getting a variance when I was second resident, and I felt like it was. You just feel terrible, right? It was maybe not a significant miss, but you feel terrible. But it happens to everyone. So we seek excellence, not perfection, and we have to see it as an opportunity for growth. And so we have to change our mindset to see that. And Ray Dalio, he's a hedge fund manager. He's the 5th largest company in the world. He says every day, write your errors down. Write it down, reflect on it, and figure out what you would do differently next time, and do it differently next time, and do it every single day, right? Reflect on these things every day. That's how you're going to get incrementally better, right? 1% better every day. So failure is not in making the mistake. A failure happens when you don't acknowledge it, and that can happen when there's no culture of safety. And I'm going to tell you, like, surgical fields, there's like, I think they're getting much better on it now, but in the past, there was no culture of safety. People didn't feel safe, so they covered their errors. And so failure happens and when you don't try to prevent it next time, right? So, and it's incredibly critical for success, right? We know Steve Jobs, right? Like, he got kicked out of Apple and then went on to become, what we know him to be. Vogel, got kicked out of his company before founding Vanguard Index Fund, the largest index fund. So it's incredibly important for growth and critical for success. And I want to suggest you attend M&M. As urology, I continue to go to M&M at urology when I was a radiology resident. And, it's great because you have other people sharing their problems and you realize it's not just you and you get perspective. You hear about people who accidentally transected the IVC, you're like, oh, that's bad. So it's great because you want to go to and have that shared experience and have it so that it's safe, right, for people to be open and honest, because that's how we learn and grow. Disruptive behavior. This is something that I learned recently in leadership course at Society of Abdominal Radiology. And it's appropriate versus problematic behavior, and it's actually defined and regulated by the Joint Commission. I didn't know that. But in 2012, they had defined it as, behaviors that undermine the culture of safety. So if you're chronically late, of course, things like sexual harassment, with the Me Too movement, being violent, being careless. And this is very problematic. We mentioned already, right? Because it increases adverse events. They're hiding things. They don't want to be open and honest. And so you don't get the transparency. And this is not just a medicine. I mean, there was a project Aristotle started by Google to develop the best, like, what are the components that make the best teams, the most productive teams? And they found out one of the most important factors is psychological safety. When you feel psychologically safe and people can contribute and there's opportunities for sharing and growing, then those teams go on to become the most creative, most innovative, most productive teams. So disruptive behavior undermines that. And so it's for us, and 20% of us are, we do it and we don't mean to, but again, just being mindful and recognizing that and, sort of controlling our own emotions, especially when it's a very stressful time, is really important because, you want to promote a safety culture. One of the other items is the group norms and standards, and Dr. Norbosch talked about that in the interview. You want to see what the culture is that you're going into. I had a fantastic residency. Our program director, he had set up very beforehand the standards, right? These are the standards that you guys need to meet for your ACR and service scores, things like that. And then with these, there's flexibility, and his other emphasis was education, and he carried, it was very clear, and he talked the talk and, walked the walk. And so that standard that he set for the residency program really dictated the experience for us. So understanding the norms and the cultures of the group that you are a part of, that you're going to be joining, is really important. So now let's get to performance optimization. How can you be the best at what you are and what you want to be? And I'm going to, so there's mental energy and timing. There's been research showing that, we have 3 phases in the day: peak, trough, peak. We peak up until 12, then we tank, and then we peak again. And they've shown this across the domains. Anesthesia operation complication rates increases 4-fold in the afternoon than in the morning. So there, and in the legal system, there's a lot more people are less nice. They're a lot meaner in the afternoon than they are in the morning. And so in the financial industry too. So harness that, right? Know when you are at your best, harness that so that you're working smarter, not harder, because willpower is depletable. Studying 12 hours a day continuously is not the way to study. It's not the smart way to study. You want to study smarter, not harder. Sleeping and just mindfulness meditation. and of course diet. It's Earth Day, so eat less meat. It's good for you and it's good for the environment. And you know, building social and professional networks. I met Dr. Wolfman at a residency committee. She was in charge of a residency committee through ARRS, and so you build networks and you find people and you make contacts. What Dr. Norbosch says, you got to get the super connectors, right? Like figure out who the super connectors are. And there's two types of mentors or coaches, right? There's the advocates and there's the advisors. Well, what's the difference? Advisors talk to you and tell you what they think you should do to make you better. Advocates talk about you in meetings when there's committee members coming together, like who should present this? And the advocates will say, well, what about Nellie? So there's different types of mentors and they play different roles in your life. And so you want to try to get, what Dr. Norbosch, build your panels of mentors and coaches. How do you find them? I mean, this is the golden question, and I don't think I really know well, but this is sort of my experience around you. You just talk to people at meetings. That's how I met Dr. Wolfman, through colleagues. And this is one thing that I didn't know, but you got to tell people what you're doing and what you're up to. People hear you and they go, oh, you should talk to this person. They're doing that. And then through that knowledge of them knowing, they know somebody else who's doing something similar who they think you will benefit from. And through that connection, you will then find, an opportunity. And I'm lucky to be part of SAR. They have active efforts to bring mentors and mentees together to try to really bridge that gap. And this is something that I learned from a business student. He said, write the name of the people, their contacts, how you met them, and then the last time you contacted them. This is what the business students do when they look for internships, for business school. And so I was like, oh, what a fantastic idea. So, the people that you meet, write it down, write their contact, figure out the information, how you met them, and reach out to them, right? And not be annoying like a woodpecker, like Dr. Norbosch says, but just let them know, hey, it was great meeting you, blah, 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 and that will build future relationships over time. Job Search and Future. This is a great book. So good they can't ignore you. This is where it comes from. The key factors you guys talked about, right? Colleagues, autonomy, money, compensation. The key factors that determines people's happiness long-term is autonomy, flexibility, mastery, and growth. We have to deliver value to people. It's about them, not us. And you have to be the best that you can to serve their needs and purposes. And that's going to be driving your next opportunities. And you have to, just develop yourself, and master your field. And then job criteria, they say just whatever aligns with what's important to you, right? What Dr. Wolfman said, and what your values are. And the second item is flexibility. If your ability to craft your job. So other considerations that was really important to me was my family. I wanted to be close to my family. And it's okay. We know from data that what you think you're going to do in the future is only accurate within 3 months. 6 months, after a year, so don't. Dr. Wolfman said things change over time. Your priorities change, right? And you'll just adapt and go with it. So, what you do in the next 3 to 6 months, even a year, that's sort of what you should be really planning for. Beyond that, it's much harder to predict, right? Because there's just so many variables that change. So don't get too stressed. If you don't get the right job right away, that things could change. And people flip, back and forth all the time from private practice to academics and vice versa. So, the first job is not your last. And there is a ginormous light at the end of a really long tunnel. And I promise you, I graduated, recently last year, and it's awesome. It's awesome. So here are sort of just the nitty gritty stuff. Matt, we can just go to the end of the slide and I'll just summarize everything. Role of luck, timing, and market. That drives 80%. The other 20 is you. And I think Ray Dalio talks about this. Like, do you want to be impactful or do you want to enjoy life? Like, where in the spectrum are you? Where's your dial? And based on that, then you sort of like can help dictate, right, which goes back to your values. I'm running out of time. So my approach, family was really important to me. So I wanted to stay close to my family. So I just looked locally, even though I interviewed, across states. It was great to get perspective, but I needed to stay close. And then like the second and third priority were just, academic interests. If it worked out, great. If it didn't, fine. And then, and you can see, but what was important to me was the location, being able like to have flexibility, have home workstation, because I wanted to be able to control my time and then to be able to craft my job, right? I didn't want to be sort of stuck, be a workhorse, go home. Like I wanted to have build stuff and do procedures and programs and whatnot. But here are sort of like the breakdown for my interview experience. So, you guys picked an awesome career. I mean, I'm telling you, like it's 8 to 12 weeks of vacation standard, okay? And there's different combinations, right? Academic institutions is 4-2-2. And then what you have to know, I didn't know until I started interviewing, was there's like outpatient practice, like stat rad, VRAD versus inpatient hospital practice, like private practice and most academic institutions. There's academics versus private practice settings. There's procedures or diagnosis only, like all the teleradiology jobs are diagnosis only. There's partnership track versus academic. And these are some things you can think about. I think they're really secondary once your values have been determined and are in the job aligns. Then I think these are sort of secondary. But this is how the radiology practices sort of worked for my experience. Matt, we'll just go through that slide and then I want to get them out of here. And the final slides are from Society of Abdominal Radiology Leaders. They had a young MD breakfast, and so I just copied and pasted their what they had to share with you. So remain optimistic. Ask colleagues to lunch. It's a good way to introduce yourself, and you'll learn a lot. I was preparing for this talk, and I had no idea how to put it together. And Joe England from USC, one of the residents, he was like, "There's this great book, so good, they can't ignore you." So, and this was over lunch, right, at the LARS, the Los Angeles Radiology Society meeting. Make unplugged time for yourself every day. Dr. Wolfman talks about that, right? You have to schedule your important things into your calendar, and you need to take time and reflect on, sort of events in your life on a regular basis. You'll never regret putting family first. Work will always be there. You can't say the same about family. From Amy Hara, she's a chair at Mayo Scottsdale. Focus on excellence in practice first, and don't get dragged down by other stuff, right? You got to work on mastery. And then embrace your failures as learning opportunities, because we all make mistakes. So, ask for help. Find a great mentor. Seek formal mentoring. And from Harvey, read an hour of radiology. I only read 30 minutes, but an hour, I guess, when you can. And from people that are closer to me, my colleagues, Amy, she says, be open-minded to all opportunities. Arthi, she says, connections is really key. We have a Facebook group called Radiology Chicks for girls only. I'm sorry, men. But this is what some of them said. If you're applying for body or MSK, do it early. Save vacation time for interviews. Reach out to people around you and ahead of you to get info. Ask your attendings and have them say a good word. If you don't hear back from a place, email them, because they may have overlooked your application. And one of my colleagues, that happened, her application was on the desk and they never looked at it, and she called and they're like, "Oh, so we didn't know, sorry." And then she ended up going there for fellowship. Pat, she says, read. Don't let the best educational years go by without reading. And Google is not enough. So this was your what you thought, and I completely agree with it. I think what I would put in the middle is self-care, mastery, values. that's it. Questions? Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, I'll be up